So after what feels like far too long, Ghostface is finally playable in Mortal Kombat 1. And like many of the characters that came before him, he also brings a whole bunch of Easter eggs and references for us to find. Now, it should probably go without saying, but this video will contain spoilers for pretty much all of the Scream movies, so consider this a spoiler warning. As always, if you think I've missed an Easter egg or a reference, let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to check it out. Anyway, without further delay, let's get started. Right, let's begin with the various references that can be heard in the pre-fight dialogue between Ghostface and the various other characters in MK1. First up, if you have Ghostface fight Smoke, this will happen.
Scary movies have made you a psycho.
Movies don't make psychos, they make psychos more creative.
So that intro was a reference to this scene from the first Scream movie, where Billy says this.
Movies don't create psychos, movies make psychos more creative!
Speaking of Billy, if you put Ghostface up against Ghostface, they will recognize each other.
Is that you, Billy? Of course it is, Stu.
Of course, Billy and Stu were the men behind the mask in the first movie, so it's cool to see them reunited here. Next up, if you once again have Ghostface fight Smoke, this will happen.
Just how many have you murdered?
You know what? I've lost count. Check the wiki.
So, Ghostface, in all of his/her various identities, has killed so many people that they've lost count and advises Smoke to check the wiki, which is pretty funny. Oh, and if you were wondering, apparently it's 45 kills, though there is some debate around that number. Another Scream 1 reference can be heard when fighting Sub-Zero.
I thought we'd finish this game.
Lucky for you, there's a bonus round.
So the promise of a bonus round is a reference to the first kill in the first movie, where Ghostface is testing Drew Barrymore's movie knowledge.
Lucky for you, there's a bonus round.
Another reference to that opening scene can be heard when fighting Kung Lao.
Name the killer in Friday the 13th.
Huh, I know nothing of film trivia.
So Ghostface asking Kung Lao who the killer in Friday the 13th is the same question that he asked in the first movie.
Name the killer in Friday the 13th.
Oh, and bonus points if any of you know the answer. It seems that the Drew Barrymore phone call was popular with the developers, as another reference to it can be heard when fighting Katana.
What is it you want?
To see what your insides look like.
So that was a reference to this scene.
What do you want?
To see what your insides look like.
Oh, and is it just me that when watching the Scream movies back, or when hearing some of these voice lines, my mind immediately goes to the scary movie version of the scenes?
I want to see what your insides look like.
Well, then turn to page 54.
Oh. Hey, nice.
Now, it's not just the Scream movies that are referenced in these intros. Other popular horror movies also get a shout out, even fictional ones. When Ghostface fights Ghostface, there is a chance that they will say this.
What's your favorite scary movie? Stab. What else?
So Stab, being the pair's favourite horror movie, makes sense, as it's the fictional in-universe movie franchise that retells the events of the actual Ghostface killings. Next up, when Ghostface fights Katana, there is a chance that they will say this.
You are a nightmare.
No, that's the guy with the glove and fedora.
So Ghostface mentioning a man with a glove and a fedora is a reference to Nightmare on Elm Street slasher Freddy Krueger. Some of you may remember that Freddy Krueger even appeared in a Mortal Kombat game as a DLC character all the way back in Mortal Kombat 9. The next creepy movie shoutout can be heard when fighting Johnny Cage.
Here's Johnny.
Finally, someone gets the game I'm playing.
So Johnny saying "Here's Johnny" is a reference to this scene from The Shining.
Here's Johnny!
Again, some of you may also remember that Johnny Cage's fatality from Mortal Kombat X also referenced the same scene.
Here's Johnny!
Up next, if you have Ghostface fight Liu Kang, they will say this.
Have there been others like you?
At least 6 by my count.
So Ghostface saying that there have been at least 6 others like him is probably a reference to the amount of Scream movies that have been released. I mean sure, some of those movies do have multiple killers, but let's not split hairs. The final intro that I wanted to look at isn't a reference. It is instead a really cool detail. Here, take a look at this interaction between Ghostface and Peacemaker, and see if you can notice what I noticed.
I'm gonna carve the meat off your bones.
Not if all you got is a knife.
So, did you catch it? Well, when Mr. Cena doubts that Ghostface could take him down with just a knife, he takes a slight look at the knife before looking back at Ghostface. Peacemaker doesn't do this in any of his other intros, so this subtle look at the knife is really cool. Oh, and one more intro-related detail that I wanted to share is something that you've heard pretty much as soon as the video began. Before every voice line, you can hear a faint click as Ghostface presses the button on his voice changer. Again, it's a really small detail, but I love it. Okay, so that does it for the references I noticed during the intros. Let's take a look at some of Ghostface's actual moves. The movie killer's fatality is suitably gory, but his second fatality is arguably even cooler, because it's home to 3 different references. So I have to be careful what I show here, because despite having its own kids app, YouTube wants all the content on YouTube to be kid-friendly, which in my opinion doesn't make any sense. Anyway, after stabbing Peacemaker in the stomach, the fallen superhero stumbles into another Ghostface, where this really cool scene takes place.
Surprise!
No!
So the image of Ghostface being seen in Peacemaker's eye is a reference to this kill from Scream 1, where the principal met his untimely demise. The thing is, how would this fatality work on a character who doesn't have any eyes? Well, lucky for us, we can answer that question with everyone's favourite visually impaired sword lover, Kenshi. Here is what the same fatality looks like when Kenshi is the victim.
Surprise!
No!
So, thanks to his heightened senses, Kenshi can see who is about to kill him. I mean, the devs could have just zoomed in on his blindfold, which would have been pretty funny, but to take into account Kenshi's blindness is really cool. Also, after finishing the fatality in a typically gory fashion, this will happen. So this pose is a reference to this scene from Scream 6. Oh, and to this day, I have no idea how Chad survived this. But then again, his name is Chad, so perhaps that explains it. There's also a sneaky reference in Ghostface's fatal blow. Right as the move starts, this will happen. So just before things get really bloody, one of the Ghostfaces will smack poor Johnny Cage with a frying pan. This is a reference to the time that Ghostface had to improvise in Scream 3. Now, one of the more upsetting deaths in the Scream movies was Dewey's, who, despite surviving 4 films, was finally taken out in the 5th. Well, if you perform the enhanced psychotic rush, you can do this. So this brutal looking front and back stab is a reference to Dewey's death scene. The final move that I recognise from one of the movies is the psychotic dive. So Ghostface will dive to the floor and crawl towards his victim, which reminded me of this scene from Scream 6. Right, let's end today's video by finding out who is behind the mask. As mentioned earlier, there have been 6 Scream movies, and according to the Scream wiki, a total of 13 killers have donned the mask. So, who did NetherRealm choose for their Ghostface? Well, when performing certain moves, the mask will come off Ghostface, but it's still kind of difficult to make out who it is. However, I've found that using Quan Chi's second fatality gives us a great look. So this is Billy Loomis, one of the killers from the first movie. Of course, Billy was referenced earlier on, along with his psycho friend Stu, so I guess this shouldn't be much of a surprise. So that's it. I know that some people don't like the references and Easter eggs that come with pop culture guest characters in Mortal Kombat, with some people thinking that they're low-hanging fruit, which to be fair they kind of are. Personally, I think it's really cool how the guys at NetherRealm really pay attention to the characters that they're adding to their game. Whether it's moves, voice lines or something else, they just get it. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video then a like is really appreciated, and be sure to subscribe for more videos just like this one. As always, thank you all for watching, and I'll speak to you all soon.